Well, hello, this is Pastor Jim Taylor from the Haven Baptist Church in sunny Kunsan in South Korea, and today it really is sunny, and I love it when it's sunny like this. God's really blessing with the weather the last few days, and I appreciate that very much. I wanted to do a special edition for your questions answered this week that I normally don't get into this kind of stuff, but between the question that someone asked me and the situation that happened in our church, I thought maybe it might be a good thing to address, and that is the issue of Ravi Zacharias. And if you know the name, you probably are familiar with all that's going on around him, and I'll get some more into that as I go through my discussion. I really don't. Typically, I make some notes and I try to follow my notes so that I can be a bit coherent, I guess, in my thoughts. And I do have some notes. I have some bullets there, that some things that I really want to make sure I don't miss as I'm discussing this. But I don't really have um, everything formatted in a note format because this issue is it's a dark issue. All right. And so I'm saying that because of the question that was asked me. And so here's the question. The question is, Pastor, as you know, Ravi Zacharias has been in the news for some proven, admitted sins of a dark nature. Can you comment on how a believer should handle this? So, yes, it's true that Ravi Zacharias has been in the news with some very dark um, things said about him. And like you, I really hate it when a religious leader falls into sin. And it doesn't matter to me who the religious leader is. He could be a Baptist, a Methodist, a Presbyterian, a Catholic, if he is whatever. If he is a so-called Christian, and I'm not saying that they are Christians, I'm not saying they're not, but the reality is when guys of that stature fall, what they say, the bigger they are, the harder the fall, right? Well, when they fall, a lot more people hear about it, a lot more people know about it. And the problem with that is you've got a world of lost people out there that they look at a situation like that. And then I walk up to them on the street and I want to share Christ with them. And they look at me and say, yeah, right, you're one of them. Don't tell me about Jesus. Don't tell me about a changed life because I know what happened with Ravi Zacharias. And so when guys like that fall, there's a tendency with some people to say, look, another Catholic priest got thrown in jail because of, sexual misconduct or whatever, and ha ha ha, because we're not Catholic, so we'll laugh at that. Or, look at those charismatic guys committing adultery and they lost their church, ha ha. Well, it's not really funny. It's not funny. People are getting hurt. The world has grown a little darker as a result of their sin. They have put forth a false face saying that they were a quote unquote man of God, and then they've fallen. And now what happens is when a real Christian comes along, that gives the devil room to cause them to blaspheme. And so I don't rejoice anytime something like this happens, because I believe when it does happen, all believers pay the price, whether these people are believers or not. So, you know as well as I do that the world likes to throw fallen people back in our faces. And they have a point, really, they do, because it's happened so much. And they say, after all, if these men were so great, why did they fall? If God is so powerful, how could they fall? If salvation is so life-changing, what is with all of these contradictions? And, they're well within their rights to ask those questions because those are serious, serious matters. Now, as to Ravi Zacharias, I knew who he was. I knew who he was before it happened, but I didn't really know much about him because, I don't read his books. I didn't ever watch any of his YouTube videos. I understand that, I think I saw about 3 minutes of one of his debates with somebody or something or another, and that's how I became familiar with who he is. And I heard other Christians talking about, hey, did you hear what Ravi Zacharias said lately? Oh, he got in this debate with this atheist and blah, blah, blah. And, and I'm like, Ravi Zacharias, okay, so he's the new face of, great Christianity out there. And I wasn't judging one way or the other. I really wasn't. I just didn't know anything about it. So when it all came out about what he did, and I might go into some of it a little bit later, but right now I don't think I will. I'm trying to stay on point. When it all came out, it didn't move me. I didn't go, it didn't shock me because I wasn't emotionally charged over the issue. I wasn't emotionally attached to him. He wasn't one of my heroes or anything like that. And I'm going to say some things about heroes at the end of this because really what we're talking about is fallen heroes. How do we address fallen heroes? Um, so this is not the first case of something like this happening. It's certainly not going to be the last case. So rather than rehearse information you probably already know, let me just tell you how I personally approached it and how I believe that any situation like this should be approached. The first thing that happened was I heard rumors. And I'm sure you did too. And since I don't like rumors very much, especially rumors of this nature, I try not to get caught up in the whole drama, really, honestly. Somebody said, "Hey, Pastor, did you hear about Ravi Zacharias?" "Really? What about Ravi Zacharias?" "Oh, well, he did stop. Listen, I don't want to know. If there's no proof, I don't want to know." And so I basically just avoided it as much as I could. And I was happy to continue doing that because Ravi Zacharias is not in my church. He's not one of my church members. I don't have to deal with whatever it was he did, and that's the way I thought back then. So why would I want to get distracted with all of this? But then one of our guys was in our church library and found a book. Somebody had donated a book that got placed in the library, and the author was Ravi Zacharias, and he brought it to me. And actually, I wasn't even aware the book was in our library. But the fact is that the brother that brought it to me, he was very concerned about it, and his concern was that somebody would see the book in our library and judge our church based upon the book. Whether it's right or wrong for them to do so is not the issue. The reality is that kind of stuff happens. And as a pastor and churches, I really believe we need to be very careful not to cause any unjust or unwarranted problems for ourselves. It's hard enough in the ministry without having somebody wanting to judge us over something like that. So and when he did this, there were other church members around, and so I pretty much I had to make a decision. I had to decide what I was going to do about it. So I decided that since I didn't know enough information about the allegations, I just wanted to remove the book and and take it and put it away until such time as we could till I could learn more about it, because I didn't know enough about it, and I just don't like to throw away books. So I said, put it in my office. It'll be out of sight and out of mind till I can learn more about this issue and make a decision. So that's kind of what I did at the time. And so that night when I got home, I started, trying to find out what I had been basically avoiding to see what the story was. And you might wonder, well, why did I take that action to start off with? Because there's a principle in God's Word about listening to accusations against people that are in spiritual leadership. And, a very quick story, quick story from a Baptist preacher, right? How's that going to go? But I remember I was riding somewhere. There was a preacher in our local area back in the States where we're from, in Virginia. And he was very, very sick. And a couple of other preachers that knew him wanted to go visit him and see how he was doing. And I was, I was there visiting, and I knew both of these guys. And they said, they were older than me. They were the older, more seasoned preacher, and I was the young guy coming up, I guess. And so they were sitting in the front seat, and I was sitting in the back seat, and we were going to this preacher's house. It was a good long drive, so there's time to talk about a million things. And the subject came up about someone else who had, the allegations were out there, or the rumor was out there that he had cheated on his wife. And one preacher said, yeah, he's cheated on his wife. I know, I've heard from so-and-so that he saw them, blah, 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 blah. And the other one was like, well, his wife told me he didn't. And if she doesn't believe it, then I'm not going to believe it. And this goes back and forth. Now, I didn't know this guy at all. I didn't know anything about the situation. I didn't know nothing. And I'm sitting there listening to these two preachers argue about what they should do with this guy that was once their friend, that now these allegations have been made. And finally, one of them turned to me and said, "Brother Jim, what do you think?" And I didn't really want to get involved, to be honest with you. So all of a sudden, the Lord brought this verse to my mind, and I'm going to share this with you because since that day, I've really tried to practice this. But 1 Timothy chapter 5, verse 19 says this. It says, "Against an elder, receive not an accusation, but by 2 or 3 witnesses." So, my point to them was, I'm not going to receive this accusation because you guys aren't witnesses to it. So I'm not going to listen to you. And that stops a lot of gossip right there. And so in the case of Ravi Zacharias, I wasn't going to receive the accusations just because it was in the news. That didn't make it true. You know as well as I do, there's a lot of news out there that's not true. And I wasn't going to take it that way. So, what I did was that night after the book incident, I went home. It was a Sunday night, and I said, well, I'm just going to have to find out more information about this because I don't know what to do. I really don't. So I began to look at credible news sources, and I went to their own. I mean, Ravi Zacharias has his own ministry. It's named after him, so it was easy to find. And they admitted that the things that were said about him, very immoral things, many of them illegal things, that they were all true. They admitted it. And I said, good night. I can't believe that, all of this is happening. This is all happening. This is all true. And so, initially I was thinking, I don't want to take another person's testimony and drag it through the mud when I don't know. I don't want to cause any ignorant damage. There needs to be witnesses to the wrongdoing. But another thought that crossed my mind was that, Ravi is not and has not been ever a member of my church. So honestly, I wasn't all that concerned about getting involved, right? So basically, whatever comes from all of this, his situation had nothing to do with me or my church, so it wasn't my concern. Now it's my concern, right? Now it becomes my concern. The book is gone. I was forced to look into the allegations, and sadly, they were true. I don't say that because, one of my heroes has fallen. I say that because as I told you in the beginning that it is sad when this happens, no matter who it is, because we all basically have to deal with a fallout from it. But there's another verse. We read 1 Thessalonians 5:19, but in the same chapter, in the very next verse, verse 20 says, "Them that sin rebuke before all, that others also may fear." So here's the deal. He sinned. What he did was wrong. He would never be allowed to stand in my pulpit and proclaim anything, no matter what it was, no matter how true it was, no matter how good it was, no matter how oratorical he could speak. It's just never going to happen. It's not going to happen, first of all, because the man died. And this is something that, this really baffles me because when he died, everyone was like, oh, did you hear about Ravi Zacharias? He died. What a great theologian. What a fantastic man of God. And he died. And, oh, the world is going to be just a darker place without him. And, all of this praise was heaped upon him. And then it wasn't long after that, all of a sudden people started finding out this dude was not good. He was wicked. And then they're like, how could this man say all of this stuff? And yet in his private life, illegal money stuff, prostitution rings, stuff going on in foreign countries that it's just dark. Don't go looking it up, okay? It's dark. You don't really need to know. You just need to know this. The man fell. And now what do we do about it? Well, we, as believers, we need to address that as it impacts our lives and say, this man fell, and this man was not a good man. Another brother in our church said he's a heretic. I don't know if he's a heretic. There have been men of God that have done bad things before. I mean, you go look at the Bible. You got David committing adultery and killing a guy, and basically stealing his wife. And David was guilty of that. And you got Moses who killed a man and buried him under the sand. And you've got good men in the Bible that did bad things. So I'm not saying he's saved, and I'm not saying he's not saved. I am just saying that I'm not in a place of judging his salvation. I do know this, that he died, and before he died, no one ever knew anything about it. So basically, he didn't really have to answer, at least not to man, for his sin. But he's not going to get away with it. The Bible says, "So then every one of us shall give an account of himself to God." So he's going to answer. He's not going to get away with it. Incidentally, in the same chapter, in First Timothy chapter 5, um, verse 24 and 25, it says this: some men's sins are open beforehand, going before to judgment, and some men they follow after. Likewise also, the good works of some are manifest beforehand, and they that are otherwise cannot be hid. So it's not like he's going to get away with it. He's not going to get away with it. But, you know, what do we do now, right? Well, here's what I think we need to be doing. I think we need to be encouraging Christians to focus on Christ. Rather than lifting up a man and saying, "Oh, look at this great man of God. Look at Dr. Dr. Big Shot is such a great man of God." What we ought to be saying is, "Look, Dr. Big Shot is preaching a great God." You see the difference? Put the focus on God. But maybe Dr. Big Shot is a great guy. Maybe he's not. I don't know. I just made the name up. I don't even know a Dr. Big Shot. If your name is Dr. Big Shot, forgive me. All right? I'm just making up a name. But the reality is we need to point people to Christ and get them to focus on Christ, because heroes will fall. All of them. At some point, they'll let somebody down. And we should not be blind to that. We should understand that. They're human. But if we exalt Christ more and exalt men less, I think it would be a whole lot less shocking. And as I told you, I'm not really shocked about this whole affair with Ravi Zacharias. I'm not shocked because it's happened so many times. I'm no longer shocked. Given that Jesus doesn't come really, really soon, we're going to see it again and again and again. The only time you're going to be shocked is when it's your hero. If it's somebody else, because I'm a Baptist, and I know a lot of Baptists because I'm a Baptist, and when a Baptist falls, it's like, "Oh no, oh, that's horrible, oh, that's so bad." And then if a charismatic falls, then we're like, we knew that they were a bunch of, phonies and blah, blah, blah. We say whatever anyway. But you need to change your attitude, because reality is stuff like that impacts all of us. And we all need to know how we're going to answer this. It was all over the news. It was in all the Christian magazines that I saw. It was all over the internet, and you know how the internet is. Everybody knows. So at some point, you're going to be asked, either by a Christian brother or maybe even by a lost guy that you work with, "Hey, what do you think about this situation? What do you know about that?" And I'm telling you, the only answer you really should be giving is, "Listen, I would much rather point you toward the Lord Jesus Christ, because heroes fall all the time. And let's put the focus on Christ." If we do that, we can follow Christ. If you're following a man, when he falls, you don't know what to do now, right? You don't know where to go. You don't know what to do. But if you're following Christ, it doesn't matter. I like what Paul said. Paul said, "Be ye followers of me as I am of Christ." And I like to think that in Paul's heart, he was thinking, "I want you to follow me so closely that if I make a turn, you'll bump right into the back of Jesus." You know what I'm saying? Because that's how closely he followed Jesus, and that's the way we ought to be. All right, so I'm not going to spend a whole lot more time on that. I think I've said just about all that needs to be said on Ravi Zacharias. Next week, when you come back for your questions answered. By the way, I want to apologize for last week. I didn't do a video last week. Those of you who watch every week faithfully, God bless you. Thank you. I don't have a lot of friends, and the ones I have, I like to keep. But that being said, I apologize. We had a lot of stuff going on last weekend. We had some missionary visitors that were in, and some other folks that were visiting, and it was just a very, very busy weekend. We were trying to do some construction at our church, and not at our church, at our school, and a lot of things going on, and I just couldn't do it, because to make the video, first I have to record it, and that takes an hour or whatever. Then I have to post it, and Korea has the lightning fast internet speeds, but it still takes a lot of time, and so I just didn't have the time to get to it. But this week, here we are, we're back, and I'm glad you're there listening. If you have any questions, by the way, about this issue, any comments on this issue, you can put your comments in the comments block below. If you just kind of came across this by accident, you can actually subscribe to our channel, and every time we post a video, or the sermons that we preach in church, or the Bible studies that we do sometimes, or the anything that comes from our church, you can subscribe, and you'll get a notification to let you know that that we've done something new, and you can go out and listen to it. So with that, I just want to say have a great weekend. God bless you, and continue walking in the reality of God's presence.